Welcome to Grid Live Pre-Race. Formula One is back in Bahrain, IndyCar is at St. Pete in Florida, and NASCAR is in Las Vegas. We will preview each race weekend right here on Grid Live Pre-Race. My name is Joshua Birch, and with me is Kobe Lambeth and the podium finish. I'm Matthew Bro. Good evening to you both, or good afternoon, I should say, just turning over for you, New Eastern over there. Now, before we get to Formula One, please take a moment and invest in the Grid Network. Link is in the video description. Thank you to all our newest investors, Colin, Mark, Deshelle, Robin, and David. You can also do a one-time investment through Buy Me a Coffee, and we will thank you on air. And a big thank you to the fine folks that brought the tree of our coffee for our Daytona 500 pre-show. Absolutely fantastic as well. I can't wait for that. Now, we encourage you to watch, to participate in the chat room, and with your questions and opinion, we'll mention on air. And don't forget to subscribe to watch us all year long. Now we'll begin. First of all, before we do go to Formula One, we want to bring you an update on Chase Elliott's condition. Yesterday evening, Hendrick Motorsports released a statement about the 2020 NASCAR Cup Series champion Chase Elliott. He was in Colorado Friday snowboarding when he was involved in an accident. He injured his left leg seriously enough to require surgery later in the evening. Now, Josh Berry, the driver of the number 8 Chevy in the NASCAR Xfinity Series, will replace Chase Elliott. Chase has had a fractured tibia, which has required a 3-hour surgery, and he is doing well, and as reported in a press conference this morning. We will have more updates on our grid programs, including tomorrow's wrap-up, Grid Live Encore, and we'll post this on our story on Wednesday's Grid Tonight, hosted by Matthew, Kobe, and myself, assuming there's an update coming as well. We are wishing a speedy and full recovery for Chase Elliott, and we continue our program with Kobe and Formula One in Bahrain.
Yeah, Josh, the 2023 Formula One season is about to begin, and there's a lot of anticipation of what we'll get this year. In free practice one, we saw Sergio Perez top the chart, Fernando Alonso second, and Max Verstappen third. Free practice 2, again, Fernando Alonso was up there, but this time to the very top ahead of both Red Bulls, Verstappen and Perez, who were second and third, respectively. This morning, Alonso was fastest in free practice 3 entering qualifying. Fernando Alonso is 41 years old, and he's been fast the entire time in Bahrain, even in testing as well. And Alonso ended up qualifying 5th. Had he taken the pole, he would become the 5th oldest driver to get a pole position in Formula One ahead of Nigel Mansell. If Alonso wins this year, he'll be the 7th oldest driver to win again. And before I ask you a question about Alonso, we have to play this clip from a past episode of Great Live Encore about Alonso and his potential ability to drive this late in his career.
Comically, Alonso got electrocuted in pre-season testing and rumoured at this point, because we never actually knew the full story, woke up thinking he was 21 years old again.
That's it. He thinks he's younger than he actually is, and no one's told him yet.
There has been a rumour going around that the reason he's so willing to keep on driving, not because he still thinks he's 21 years old, it's because his body is still capable of keeping the muscle memory of a man much younger than him.
Wait a minute. Is this a superhero origin story we're listening to right now?
Yeah, Fernando Alonso, the driver who never actually physically ages and can always just race. He'll be 66 and with a Zimmer frame due to sitting in the Formula One car and still racing.
One day, after an electric shock in the paddock, he became Fred Lonzo.
Oh my. That's what midnight does here, but it's all true as well. He did get electrocuted.
yeah, for sure. So Josh, now that Alonso appears to have a fast car, can he contend for the win in Bahrain in the races ahead?
I really do think he can. I mean, from what we saw in preseason testing, we were all thinking, it's just a glory run. But then there was more pace. We looked at the data, and he was quicker than Ferraris and in the race pace as well. He's 27 thousandths off of Verstappen in the long run as well. And now here this weekend, he topped practice 2. He topped practice 3. He was fast in qualifying. I reckon as well, and me and Megan were talking about this in the commentary box during the watch-along, because that qualifying session ended so abruptly. It's like everyone went out for another lap and then decided, no, I don't want to waste the tyres. So it was an anticlimax. I'm convinced there's something more, both at Aston Martin and at Mercedes, that they just didn't want to risk it and they didn't want to show the true pace. So there's something still surprising coming their way. I generally think that Aston's got pace. I wish Stroll was 100% fit, because him and Alonso could be right up there in the top 2, in the top 3, top 4, battling it out, because I don't think Ferrari had an interesting pace, but they're seeming to be nowhere. So All in all, I think Alonso will be heading for a race win at some point this year. And as Dima says, welcome to El Plan, Fernando Alonso on the Aston Martin team. Yeah, that was the El Plan as well. Swap teams because Alpine have had one of their worst ever winters and Aston Martin have had one of their best winters since they stole Mercedes' car back in 2020.
And I mean, I can definitely agree with everything Joshua just said there. I feel like you can never count out a two-time world champion in Fernando Alonso, especially with the talent he has going to a new team. I saw a bunch of different threads on social media comparing him to kind of like the late, great Niki Lauda in the sense where joining a new team after retiring previously, coming back, or having some issue arise previously, coming back, and then being able to contend for a world championship once again. So Alonso does have that pace that I don't think we've seen in a few years, especially coming from McLaren and Alpine and stuff like that. But I mean, now he's got a shot. I feel kind of bad for Sebastian Vettel sitting at home like, dang, this could have been me this season. I think Sebastian Vettel will come back, though, eventually. Maybe that his unretirement will be sooner than later after seeing the pace this car has, nonetheless. But I don't know if it's hard to count him out. I mean, obviously, I think he'll reach that 100 podium mark, though, this season. I really do. But unfortunately, we're so early in the year, anything can happen. I mean, after last season's Bahrain Grand Prix, when we saw both Red Bulls double DNF, and we were like, oh, no, something bad's going to happen. And then they just took off. So it's going to be hard. But Alonso, I don't know if the car has the pace on the straightaways, but when it comes to the turns, they're matching some of the best teams. So I think he'll definitely contend for a win. maybe this weekend as well. I mean, he's starting P5 on the grid, so it'd be pretty awesome. I mean, one of the oldest drivers on the grid here. You can hope if he can get it done.
Yeah. And for once, Matthew, it really seems like Fernando Alonso is on the right side of the equation because he has a history of leaving a team, going to a lesser competitive team. The team he just left, always seems to be way more competitive. And I know when it was first announced that Alonso was going to be leaving Alpine, going to Aston Martin, there was a lot of criticism that he was taking a huge step back. And now after seeing the pace of the Aston Martin testing and so far this week in Bahrain, this has been incredible to see what Aston Martin has been able to do over the offseason, get this car very, very, very competitive. And we'll have to see how Fernando Alonso does this weekend and the rest of the season. But if something happens to those Red Bulls, he could very well be in position to potentially steal a win. And I'm sure Alonso is happy about the new El Plan going on right now because things seem to be looking up for a really good 2023 season, assuming Aston Martin's going to keep up with the development of this car throughout the year. And looking at qualifying, Red Bull locked out the front row on the grid with Verstappen and Perez, followed by the two Ferraris, Leclerc and Sainz, third and fourth, behind Alonso, who starts fifth. Both Mercedes, George Russell and Lewis Hamilton, were sixth and seventh. Last year, Mercedes could match Red Bull's pace, and the gap appears to be larger to kick off 2023. And then in comments to the media, Lewis Hamilton did not seem pleased with the car so far at all. Matthew, has Mercedes seemingly taken a step back, and should they be concerned about a repeat of 2022?
I think definitely. There definitely should be a concern. I mean, granted, we are in the first week of the season, then preseason testing is finished. But I feel like at the same time, you'd have to expect them already being behind Red Bull and Ferrari. Like, I didn't really feel like there'd be... I feel like this just shows that Ferrari and Red Bull are continuing to improve while the rest of the grid seems to not be at the same level as these teams. And I don't know if it was George Russell said something along those lines of Red Bull's just in their own league up there. So I would be concerned, especially when you're 7 or 8-time world champion, depending on who you're talking to, is still concerned with the car. But he did say earlier, too, something along the lines of he liked where they were. But then once preseason testing hit, it felt like there was a reality check in the Mercedes garage over there. So it's really tough to see. I don't know if you'd say they've taken a step back, but at the same time, they haven't really moved forward either. So.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And I was just looking at the results from Q2 as well to make sure I was right with what I was saying. It was the fact that they was 2-3 at one point as well, which was surprising. And me and Megan both said to each other in the commentary, what's happening here? Mercedes have suddenly got pace, but Ferrari is so far down. What's happened to Aston Martin? And Red Bull is still struggling a bit. So I think that once everything's balanced out, Mercedes pretty much look normal where they were, right down the field, because the car, even though it's an improvement on the W13, it's still got a lot of problems with it. And Hamilton said that he had problems. Russell, as you said, Matthew said, there's a lot happening, we're not happy. So I've got a feeling that the update that's coming, I think, for Emilia-Romagna, I think McLaren have got Baku's one. So the update that's coming will be a big improvement for the car, and then they can go win for the title. And I think, actually, I'm just being corrected here, it is Baku for the Mercedes change and Emilia-Romagna for McLaren. That's confirmed. But still, is it too late in the season to go for it then? Time will tell. But right now, Mercedes are in trouble, and it was a decent quality. Let's hope they can have a better race pace run, because they did look like they had a strong run in testing. So fingers crossed. But that Ferrari, I'm just seeing a replay right now of Charles Leclerc locking up at turn 1, and of course he caused the red flag. So it was the Ferrari that is actually the more shocking as well. Both of them have said step back. So I would say tomorrow it would be Red Bull, Aston Martin, Ferrari, Mercedes in that battle order. Well, one of the cars would be ahead there, because Ferrari was struggling today, and it looked a bit embarrassing. Like, they've changed everything over the winter, but it's the still same old Ferrari. Nothing ever works. And why he didn't go out why Leclerc didn't go out for a run at the end of Q3, I have no idea. He didn't run out of tyres, so unless they saved it for the race, I don't know. We know they had floor damage because 2 bits of carbon fibre flew off, but really bizarre. So Ferrari are in trouble, Mercedes are in worse trouble. Aston can just come up here and try for second. So I said this in the commentary. Wouldn't it be fantastic if it looks like we're going to have Max Verstappen and Fernando Alonso both going for their third world titles? The old generation, the oldest guy on the grid versus one of the youngest guys on the grid, the youngest ever race winner. Both of them were that at one time. Alonso was the youngest one in Hungary 03. So you've got the oldest driver on the F1 grid versus one of the youngest ever winners in Formula One, battling out for third world title. Sounds magical. I want that story so much.
Yeah, Josh. It will be really exciting to see Fernando Alonso and Max Verstappen battling for the world championship this year, and Ferrari. Fred for sure has his work cut out for him, trying to get that program back to where it used to be, and Mercedes. They better hope that the update coming along will help make their car more competitive. And I'm not sure if Lewis Hamilton can stand another winless season. He definitely wants to get back on the top step of the podium this year. And I got a comment there in the chat room from SHT saying that Nico Hülkenberg is hulking back his performance today. Yeah. Is like his performance back in 2017 with Renault and Lando putting that McLaren P11 is super impressive. Yes, certainly there are a lot of great storylines to follow this weekend in Bahrain. And at the back of the grid, Pierre Gasly's starting last after his lap time was deleted. Not a good start for his tenure there at Alpine. Nick de Vries was 19th, Oscar Piastri 18th, Kevin Magnussen 17th, Logan Sargent, the American driver, tied Lando Norris's lap time. However, since Norris set the time first, he was the one who ended up advancing to Q2. Which driver eliminated in Q1 is more likely to rebound on Sunday and maybe score points?
I've got to say, don't count out the new guys on the block, because we're going to have really strong pace. We've seen what de Vries can do with a bad car. We saw that back at Monza. So don't count him out. I would also say the most likely to try and score points, Pierre Gasly in the Alpine. Ocon was surprising me with the pace. I'd written Alpine off, to be fair, after testing. I thought they were one of the worst teams on the grid. They lost time compared to their last year's car at the same point in testing. So that was a big shocker to me. But they've come back. Ocon has had a big improvement in the top 10, so brilliant. As you see, where does he start? Ocon starts 9th on the grid ahead of Hülkenberg. So I think Gasly will come back with a mixture of pit stops, and I reckon Logan Sargent will do quite well, especially considering that we've got where is he on the board? Alexander Albon 15th, but at the time was up there, but had his lap time deleted, so got kicked out as well. So it wasn't really fair, that one.
And I can definitely agree with that. I think most of the young guys, which is it's crazy to think Nick de Vries is also, I believe he's older than like Charles Leclerc and Max Verstappen, along with other guys in the field.
Yeah, he's 29 nearly.
Yeah. I mean, what we saw from him, though, being, would you say, young to Formula One, was very impressive in his first ever start, scoring points for Williams. And now he is obviously with his new team now. I would say him probably, but I wouldn't write out really any of the drivers here. Pierre Gasly has a lot of experience coming into this. Kevin Magnussen being 17th, which is surprising considering his own teammate in the same car, Nico Hülkenberg, was in the top 10 of the grid. So I feel like it's going to be an unpredictable start. I feel like a lot of the separation with these teams, like besides the top 3 teams, you would say, in Ferrari, Red Bull, and Mercedes, obviously not in that order. Don't take it that way. But in terms of, I feel like there's a gap. Like Oscar Piastri is like 18th, but Lando Norris is 11th. And then same with Hülkenberg being 10th because his lap got, I guess, disqualified because he ran off the track limits. But then his team at Magnussen being 17th. I feel like there's a huge gap in between some of these teams in the back of the grid. That's why I think it's going to be very confusing. But if I had to say one driver, it's hard. I think the guy starting on the last row of the grid in 20th and 19th with both Pierre Gasly and Nick DeVries, I think those are going to be the two. And the comment from Demas as well, welcome to the 3 super rookie in Formula One with Nick DeVries, Logan Sargent, Oscar Piastri. And in the fact that Yuki can get that AlphaTauri into Q2 is also surprising. I didn't expect that. That comment's from SHE. I would say so as well. And then also, shout out once again the Demas. Nico Hülkenberg, he is Hulking back, is like what we saw previously in the chat room. And then our very own Adam Lemery's. Nice to see an American back on the Formula One grid. Can't wait to see how Logan does in 2023. Apologize for reading all those, but I think Logan Sargent's definitely someone we haven't really seen much of yet, obviously in Formula One, making his first career start. So anything can happen. I mean, we've only seen, I think, 2 of the drivers on this grid get a podium in their first ever start. And I believe it was Sir Lewis Hamilton. I believe Magnussen, but he has not gotten a podium.
Yeah, Magnussen did it.
So, I mean, you never can happen. I mean, we've seen drivers come from back of the grid all the way to first. So I'm very excited, I mean, honestly, to see what can happen here. But I think it could really be any driver tomorrow.
Yeah.
I'm desperately now trying to look through the notes.
Yeah, Matthew, totally agree. I think it could be a really unpredictable Bahrain Grand Prix all throughout the field. But getting back to the question, Josh, you brought up the point about Nick DeVries being able to drag a car to the front. I just did a quick internet search. Nick DeVries is 28 years old, and in traditional Formula One societal norms, 28 years old is considered too old, to be a Formula One driver for the first time. So let's give a round of applause for Nick DeVries for being able to beat the odds here. He's a Formula 2 champion and also a Formula E world champion as well. It's really nice to see him be able to, be patient, go race other things in the meantime. Also did a bit of sports car racing as well while he waited for this opportunity to make it into Formula One. And after he won the F2 title, so many people were saying it's a crime that Nick DeVries did not make it to Formula One. He's going to be, one of the top drivers in recent memory who never got an opportunity to experience the pinnacle of motorsport, but he's indeed beating those odds. And kudos to him, because a lot of drivers think, once you get to your mid to late 20s, the F1 dream is completely over for most. But DeVries proved, that if you keep persevering, keep working hard, showing what you can do in other categories, that one opportunity may come around. So DeVries realizes that he has a great opportunity here with AlphaTauri to show what he can do. And if he does well with AlphaTauri, he could move up to a more competitive team in the future. And tomorrow you can catch lights out for the Bahrain Grand Prix at 10 a.m. Eastern time on ESPN. Charles Leclerc is the defending race winner. Red Bull had a double DNF. We know how the rest of 2022 went. We will recap the race on Sunday tomorrow. Grid Live wrap up. Be sure to subscribe to us right here on YouTube. Now, Matthew, another series is starting this weekend, the NTT IndyCar Series for the Firestone Grand Prix on the streets of St. Pete.
And absolutely, Kobe, it's great to see. I mean, we first started with NASCAR starting it off for motorsport, and now all of the sports we cover in grid, both the rating, both the ranking, and then on Grid Network in general, are finally back. And IndyCar is back at St. Pete, Florida. It once again serves as the opening round of the NTT IndyCar Series. Part road course, part airport circuit, but a challenging track for all of the drivers on the grid. The first practice here saw 3 red flags early on as several drivers hit the wall, including Scott McLaughlin and Josef Newgarden. We have 6 past winners in this field, with Helio Castroneves leading all the drivers with 3 wins. Newgarden and Will Power are tied at 2 each, and their teammate, Scott McLaughlin, is looking to make it 2 in a row, tying his Penske teammates. Colton Herta and Graham Rahal each have 1 win here at St. Petersburg. And starting with you, Joshua, all of them started in the top 10 in last season's race. So how important will qualifying be later today? And do you believe there are any favorites for pole position?
Got to look at Colton Herta. He seems to have a run with this place at the moment, so I think he's definitely a tip for pole position. I think as well, looking at it, you can't, even though he touched the wall, you've got to add in as well that of Scott McLaughlin. VK has been quite quick, as I know you're going to mention later on. And I'm really disappointed I can't cover any of the qualifyings bar the 500 this year because there's just so much on. So we're doing reports on them as well, and for the pre-shows, because we have 20 minutes after Formula 1 finishes before the green flag flies. So there's not enough time to get a qualifying highlights package in, which is really disappointing unless we put something on with Tom. We haven't decided that just yet. But I'm really hoping as well that we're going to see Herta have a strong start, because he was rumoured for the F1 seat, didn't get it. Another time here in IndyCar. He does want to be here, but he's got his eyes set on Formula 1. But he needs to succeed in IndyCar first to get the attention. So I think he needs to be a top run here. And of course, he loves St. Pete. He's won here twice before. So yeah, my pick will be Colton Herta.
Yeah, Josh, I totally agree with you. I think not just Colton Herta, but Andretti Autosport in general, you have to look at those drivers for the pole. Colton Herta, Kyle Kirkwood, and even Roman Grosjean as well. And from Chip Ganassi Racing, Thor and Alex Palou, they've really started off strong throughout the weekend here. It's just the second day of on-track action. Had practice yesterday, at practices this morning. It's really going to be interesting to see which driver and team's going to be able to get the pole. But if I have a Honda engine right now, I'm very happy, because it seems like Honda has an early edge over the Chevrolets. And I believe we have a comment in the chat below, if you can display it on the screen, about Dima said, IndyCar driver Tony Kanaan is retiring. Yes, Dimas, we reported, I believe several weeks ago on Grid Tonight, that Tony Kanaan is going to be running his final IndyCar race in the Indy 500 with Aaron McLaren in that number.
Don't want to accept it.
Yeah, and that number 66 Chevrolet. Yeah, Josh. TK's been one of the most beloved IndyCar drivers, since he first started racing in this series, and it's really hard that he's been around for this long, and now it's finally coming to an end. But I'm glad TK is going to get to go out on his own terms, and he's going to be in a competitive ride as well. So maybe he'll be able to do better than he did last year with Chip Ganassi Racing. Last year he showed that he still has the fire and the talent to get it done, and I'm sure Aaron McLaren is going to give him a really fast piece for them. And if last year is any indication of how this year could go, TK might be able to do the Peyton Manning, go out on top.
Definitely, I can definitely agree with that. It's very sad to see legends of motorsport retire. You never want to see it happen, but unfortunately, that's how this works. But so we discussed P1, practice 1. Now we're going to discuss the second practice, which happened earlier today. Colton Herta was the fastest today, ahead of McLaughlin and VK, and then Kyle Kirkwood, 4th place again, being consistent so far this weekend. So starting with you for this one, Kobe, can Kyle Kirkwood be a potential surprise winner today, or tomorrow technically, and would he be a really surprise winner?
Yeah, I think Kyle Kirkwood could potentially get his first career IndyCar victory this weekend on the streets of St. Pete. And if you watched the IndyCar practice broadcast yesterday on Peacock, the broadcasters were saying that Kyle Kirkwood said if he was going to get his first career win in IndyCar, he'd probably think it would happen on a street course, because he feels like, that these are the type of tracks that he's really, really good at. And Kirkwood also showed that the pace he showed in testing was no fluke as well. It was one of the fastest cars, in Palm Springs, California, at the Thermal Club. And the pace is certainly transferred over to St. Pete as well. And Kyle Kirkwood, thankfully, was able to be in a low pressure situation last year with AJ Foyt Racing, where he was able to, make those typical mistakes. Probably had a little too many DNFs, which they mentioned on the broadcast yesterday, and that's something he'll have to clean up this year. So luckily, I felt like that was a really good place for Kirkwood to start off, with one of the smaller teams in the paddock in AJ Foyt Racing, where the spotlight is not going to be on him, because if he had the season he had last year at AJ Foyt Racing and Andretti Autosport, even as a rookie, that would be a lot more criticism on him. So I think it was good for Kirkwood to be in that environment first, and now he's going to be with one of the top teams in this series, Andretti Autosport. Now he has a great opportunity to show why so many people were so high on him coming out of the Road to Indy ladder system. They said that this was one of the best young talents that they've ever seen come through the Road to Indy, and he has a great opportunity to remind us all why so many people thought it could be the best thing in IndyCar racing.
I must admit, I'm fingers crossed that we're going to see something coming forward from Kyle, because I think if anybody deserves a bit of good luck, it's him. After last season as well, as you mentioned, Kobe, as well, he was always at the back, always struggling, but he has the pace. He has it. And I've finally seen that he's got something. 4th place again, as you said, consistent so far. Kyle Kirkwood, 17 starts last year, all bad. Oh dear. I've just been told some interesting news about there's someone's investigation in Formula One, but I can't say who. But it's not already bad. It's just an investigation planning for speeding. But I can't say who yet because it hasn't officially been announced. But I think for Kyle Kirkwood to be in top 4, big improvement. Definitely you see him winning a race at some point this season. The car looked on it in pre-season as well. So definitely looks quite fun. Fingers crossed for Kyle. Surprise winner though today? No, not yet. This track is all about experience, and it's going to be Herta, Newgarden, even McLaughlin now. They're the ones to watch. McLaughlin, this is his first track he's raced at. Is it 3 times or 4? Isn't it? But it's his most repeated because he did it at the end of the season, then he did it at the start of the next season. So I think it was 2020. So 1, 2, 3, 4 times he's raced it now at the circuit. Wow. Well, Glocks has been in it 4 times now.
Absolutely. And when we were discussing, like you said, this track probably needs some experience. I think some of the favorites for tomorrow's race definitely you would consider have some experience here with Will Power, Colton Herta, and I'd argue Scott Dixon as well. Dixon was the fastest in free practice 1, but has not won here just yet. Colton Herta and Andretti Autosport look much better already with Herta. Kyle Kirkwood and Romain Grosjean looking much better. Will Power has won here, looking fast. But so far, he has not made any mistakes on the track yet. And 2 past champions and 1 driver, many have linked to Formula One and Colton Herta, but no championship or Indy 500 wins yet. So do you believe, I'll start with you for this one, Joshua, Colton Herta has to have a championship contention season to continue being considered one of the best drivers and valuable FIA super license points to gain those points?
It's actually, I promise I wasn't reading the script to see that question earlier, but it links back perfectly to the point I made. Yeah, I think he does, because his super license points are just about going out the window now. So if he wants to be in Formula One as early even as 2026, with the rumored deal now swirling around Andretti maybe buying AlphaTauri if it's up for sale as early as 2025, then he needs points because he's one of their shoo-ins. I would also think alongside Romain Grosjean. So I think Herta needs to have a good season. He needs to be in the championship contender, and I think he actually needs to win the championship. Enough's enough now with him. If Herta is going to do a championship, it has to be now. I also think this is a crunch year for Alexander Rossi. So we're really this is coming in. This is now going to be a big time to show and really going to see what's going to happen. I've just read your next question. I haven't been on that much of IndyCar due to Formula One, and the next question is perfect for what I was just saying about. But I'll throw it to Kobe.
Yeah, I got a comment there from Joe Dexter says looking forward to watching St. Petersburg run for the first time tomorrow. I believe you can catch the coverage on NBC tomorrow at noon Eastern. Tomorrow's going to be a really, really exciting day for racing. 10 a.m. Eastern time. Yeah, you have the Bahrain Grand Prix Formula One. Noon, IndyCar Firestone Grand Prix on the streets of St. Pete. And then 3:30, you got the NASCAR Cup Series of Las Vegas. So if you're a motorsports fan, there's a lot of great action. Tomorrow, a great triple header of motorsports. And getting back to the question that you asked about Colton Herta, I think it's going to be really important for Colton Herta to be up there battling for the championship all year long. Last year didn't really go as well for him. And thankfully this year, the Indy 500 is not going to be awarding double points. He had that miserable month of May after he ended up flipping on carb day. The car just wasn't right when Andretti repaired it. Got to the 500, the car was slow, and had to end up retiring from the race because they just had so many issues with the car. And with the double point situation, that really ended up killing Colton Herta's chance to win the championship. And since double points are gone this year, if you have a bad Indy 500, thankfully it's not going to be the end of the world. Yeah, and I think Colton Herta, he has to enter this year, with a chip on his shoulder, like I have something to prove that I didn't think I was worthy of being in Formula One. He goes out there, wins the championship. He automatically has those 40 super license points to potentially go to Formula One in the future. So I think that should be one of the driving factors for Colton Herta this year is to go out there, be up there week after week, winning races, trying to win this year's IndyCar championship to prove that he indeed belongs on the Formula One grid in the future.
And definitely for Colton Herta, I feel like what drew me a little more to IndyCar than previously had was that whole situation with Colton Herta attempting to join Formula One. And I feel like they kind of made it a little hard on him. So now, like you said, Kobe, with that chip on his shoulder, he's got to come out and do even better in IndyCar to show, because I feel like he attempted to do other things along the lines besides IndyCar in order to get those super license points that unfortunately he could not obtain. But I would argue he has to probably be up there in the championship fight. Kind of like last year, we went down to, I believe, the final race had 5 different possibilities for a champion. Colton Herta's got to make his way up into that at least top 3 in order to do it. And then we were talking about Herta making the driver change. Another driver that has made a major switch was Alexander Rossi, who is now with McLaren. McLaren is now a 3-car team with Pato O'Ward, has carried this team into championship contention for the past 2 seasons. So starting with you, Kobe, for Alexander Rossi, is expecting a podium or a win this weekend a realistic goal for him?
Is it, well, based on Alexander Rossi's pace this weekend, it's been kind of up and for the number 17 Arrow McLaren. So I think a win or a podium this weekend is probably not going to be realistic for Alexander Rossi, but who knows? We still have qualifying later today, and IndyCar is always unpredictable. So we could very well see anything happen. But right now, I think that the most important thing for Alexander Rossi is to start building chemistry with his new Arrow McLaren team and just getting the best possible result. At best, I think a realistic goal should probably be a top 10 finish.
So are you coming to me on that one? Yeah. I agree with what I was saying earlier, because it's crunch time now. No more messing around, because for Alexander Rossi, he's moved away from a team which he only won 1 race with in the past 24 months. And he's an Indy 500 champion. He's been in that position again when he could have won it, didn't. And I think now with McLaren, it's a fresh challenge, but it also comes with the knowledge of that McLaren don't take failure. They don't take anything like that. So and now they've got 100% ownership of the team. Now that Schmidt Peterson have left, if you make an error and you make constant problems, it's bye. You won't come back. You'll be out. And I don't think there's many people in IndyCar who want to keep Rossi around because of his inconsistency and not race-winning mentality. He's a decent driver. He's a fantastic champion for the 500, but he's not consistent anymore. So I think he needs maybe a podium, but I would say he needs a consistent season, and he needs to be in that title hunt at the end of the season, along with Colton Herta. Otherwise, I think their careers will pretty much go stale. It's horrible to say that, but we've had enough babying for them now. It's time to see if they can actually step up and do the job. It's harsh words.
I mean, I think a lot of people can agree with those quote harsh words you just said. I don't know how harsh they were though, but since we're about 5 minutes to the top of the hour, I want to throw it to you again once, Josh, before we let you go today. Talking about pick a winner. So we have Formula One, IndyCar, and NASCAR for this coming tomorrow. Who are your 3 drivers you think will get it done?
All right, just because Megan and me discussed this earlier on, because since 2016, nobody who's won the season opener has gone on to win the title, and that was a thing before it as well. There's only about 4 or 5 times in F1 history that they've won the season opener, has gone on to win the championship. So for that basis, me and Megan have both agreed we need Max Verstappen to win the race tomorrow, so that Fernando Alonso can be the world champion this year. That's the thing. That's the thinking behind it. So I'm going to go for Max Verstappen to win the Bahrain Grand Prix tomorrow, on the basis he won't win the championship. For IndyCar, I am going to stick my neck out and go with Scott McLaughlin over that of Colton Herta. Very risky. I think Herta will get pole, but I think McLaughlin will win. And in NASCAR, can't really go any further, can you? Then hometown hero of Kyle Busch. Looking, as you said, on a roll. I think he could be something to go forward. And he's been in the previous 2, Fontana, and of course the Daytona 500. So, yeah, I'll put with Kyle Busch in the mix there to win this weekend.
I think those are very respectable picks. I might have to change mine so all of ours aren't the same exact ones. I'm
sick of Ed. I'm sick of Ed being at the top. I've had enough. I need points.
We're all of us, I believe, here today are chilling at 2, so we're all technically tied for second. but I'm sure we'll get at least one right this weekend. So Sunday noon Eastern will be the Firestone Grand Prix of St. Petersburg. Scott McLaughlin, like Joshua just said, won this race last year. Can he make it 2 in a row? And we will recap the race Sunday on Grid Live Wrap-Up. Be sure to subscribe to us right here on YouTube. And now the final race of Sunday. So if you're on the East Coast, you're going to have a bunch of fun tomorrow. You're going to have breakfast with Bahrain with Formula One, lunch at St. Pete with IndyCar, and dinner in Las Vegas for the NASCAR Cup Series. So before we discuss this, I want to throw it over to Kobe as we have another NASCAR update we've been discussing throughout this show.
Yes, and if you've been following our Grid Network programming for the past week, you probably heard us talk about the bad luck going on at 2311, specifically Tyler Reddick, whose 2023 season is not going well at all. Ended up getting caught up in a crash in the Daytona 500. Ended up getting caught up in a crash last week in the Auto Club, and then another crash in the Xfinity race. And according to Fox Sports' Jamie Little, Tyler Reddick is not going to be able to practice and qualify today because the team discovered an issue in the engine. So he's going to have to go through an engine change and start at the rear of the field tomorrow. So Tyler Reddick's not going to get any practice or qualifying laps and at all. So his dreadful start to 2023 continues for a third consecutive weekend. And also regarding the injury to Chase Elliott, Kyle Busch was just in the media center moments ago, and he said he actually reached out to Chase Elliott and promised, to be there for him during his recovery period, because as we all know, when Kyle Busch ended up winning his first Cup championship, he didn't run all the races that season because he ended up suffering a similar injury that Chase Elliott has suffered. So Kyle Busch is probably the best person that Chase Elliott can lean on during that time, because he knows what it's like to go through a tough situation like this. So I thought it was really cool to see that Kyle reached out to Chase and, offered advice to try to help him out there, because I think that Kyle Busch's experience is really going to help Chase Elliott get through this faster and get back on track sooner rather than later.
Absolutely. And then just to kind of summarize for people, if they are just joining us now for our NASCAR coverage, the Pennzoil 400 at Las Vegas Motor Speedway will be the second Cup Series West Coast swing stop. And for the fans just joining us, want to summarize a little bit what has occurred most recently in the past, I'd say 12 to 24 hours. Chase Elliott is out of the race this weekend. He has injured his left leg, fractured his tibia in a snowboarding accident yesterday, and he had a over 3-hour surgery on that leg. He was in Colorado and will not be in the car this weekend. Josh Berry of Junior Motorsports will be making his third NASCAR Cup Series start in his career, and he'll be piloting the number 9 Napa Chevrolet. We anticipate that a team will request a medical waiver for Chase, assuming that in the case, once back, a win and he will be in the playoffs. And the top 30 rules that we have previously discussed are gone for this year. I thought that was very interesting. And if more information on Chase Elliott emerges in the days ahead, we'll have a full report on it on Grid tonight. And with more rules with Tyler Reddick, Kobe just broke to all of us today, and just more recently, I should say, Tyler Reddick will not be in practice nor qualifying as the 2311. With their disastrous start, you would argue, has yet found another issue with the engine, and he will be starting from the rear of the field. But now if we flash back to last year at Las Vegas, Kyle Busch and Martin Truex Jr. looked like they would be fighting for a win, but a late race caution changed it to the number 48 Alex Bowman taking his first win of the season and clinching a spot in the playoffs. 1 year later, Kyle Busch is coming off a win at Auto Club, new team, new number, new pretty much everything. And Alex Bowman is one of the 4 drivers to finish top 10 in every race so far this season. Martin Truex Jr., though, winless and missed the playoffs, and so far no top 10 finishes this year for the driver of the number 19 for Joe Gibbs Racing. So for you, Kobe, if Truex fails to finish in the top 10 yet again, would it be reasonable for some to wonder about his plans for the 2024 season and if he will be piloting the number 19 once again?
Well, Matthew, I think it's way too soon to be concerned about Martin Truex Jr.'s future. I mean, we're just 2 races in, and for goodness sake, he just won the Busch Light Clash at the LA Coliseum. So I think we need to pump the brakes on being concerned about him not having a top 10 finish. He finished 15th in the Daytona 500. He finished 11th at Fontana. So, right on the door of a top 10 finish, and got the win to kick off the season and the exhibition race. So So I think just give it some time, and we're going to see Martin Truex Jr. finishing in the top 10, top 5, and probably going to get a points win. Looking at his 17th place point finish in 2022, I think that's extremely misleading. Look at when you see that he finished 17th, you think, oh my goodness, Martin Truex Jr. had a really, really bad year. But actually, no, he didn't. We just had so much parity in 2022 with this next gen car that unfortunately he just wasn't able to find victory lane and win a points race. So that's the only reason why Martin Truex Jr. finished so low in the standings. But if you looked at the season long standings in 2022 without playoffs involved, Martin Truex Jr. had a really good season. He had some really strong runs. The only thing that I guess you can say that wasn't good was not winning a race. And in a playoff system that requires you to win, and you're rewarded when you win even more. So that was the only thing that MTJ wasn't able to do. But just a third points race of the year, I don't think there's anything we need to worry about regarding Martin Truex Jr.'s future. And as we all know, he's not getting any younger. He's definitely up there in age, where you would expect drivers to, be considering retirement. We don't really know right now how much longer MTJ is going to be running full-time in the NASCAR Cup Series. But I think right now he's looking forward to just getting through the 2023 season. And Demas right here reminded us once again that this is the final race at Las Vegas Motor Speedway for Kevin Harvick before retirement and joining the Fox booth full time next year. And we'll also see Kevin Harvick race at Las Vegas later this year in the playoffs as well.
Yeah, definitely. And it's very interesting to talk about two guys who seem to be rumored retirement for a few years now. Kevin Harvick has I was about to say finally announced, like I was excited, but really I am disappointed to see that he's the only driver left that started in the Cup Series before I was alive. So I find that crazy. But for Truex, I'm going to 100% completely agree with you. If you're driving a automatic, slam your brakes. If you're driving a manual, make sure you hit the clutch while you slam your brakes, because this is just far too early to say, oh, without a top 10, he needs to retire. I mean, they're always fun to talk about those scenarios, especially when we're in week 3 of 36 for the NASCAR Cup Series season. But I don't know if you consider the Chevrolet development as well for Martin Truex Jr. I don't know if Sammy Smith is ready to pilot that number 19 yet. I don't know. John Hunter Nemechek's been rumored to go to Ford as well, go back to Ford, I should say. Or is he ready to make that step back up to the Cup Series as well? And then also the other rumors about if Junior Motorsports joins a Cup charter, will Martin Truex Jr. leave Joe Gibbs Racing to run maybe a part-time schedule with Junior Motorsports? Because we see that Bass Pro Shop seems to have a connection with Chevrolet and Junior Motorsports, as well as Martin Truex Jr. with Toyota. But it's always reasonable to wonder. I mean, Martin Truex Jr. is getting up there in age, and especially missing the playoffs last season, finishing 17th. I feel like the playoff system, he's been one of those drivers to seemingly benefit from it. He's one of the most consistent drivers on the grid, and you cannot argue with that. But at the same time, it seems like he always found his way in the top 4 due to the playoff system. And then it kind of messed him up, for lack of a better term, when it came to last season, because he was up there in 5th, 6th in points when the regular season ended. And then unfortunately, due to the way NASCAR runs their playoff system, just loses 11 spots almost instantly once the checkered flag was at Daytona. So is it reasonable? Yeah, you can wonder. I mean, that's the fun of it at the end of the day. We all have our minds to wonder, these fantasy scenarios that we have previously discussed, nonetheless. But I don't know. I think we're way too early. Maybe if this starts happening in week 24, like right before the playoffs start, I think that would be 25 or 26 technically, and he has not had as many top 10s, then you might wonder, okay, maybe let off the gas, but don't hit the brakes just yet. But yeah, for Martin Truex Jr., I would definitely say it all depends on how you're feeling. And then we'll see some of that today with practice and qualifying coming later on today. But we've seen drivers from the very back come up to win, especially at this track. Last year's race was the first of this generation of cars. We call it the next gen car, on a 1.5 mile oval. It is also the first race of the round of 8 in the playoffs. And we saw Logano take that win last season. That set him up for the championship 4 race, allowing him to prepare for it. And he claimed his second championship. So once again, for you, Kobe, do you anticipate teams to have more of a race setup focus rather than qualifying, considering the variety of where these drivers start and finish, and then also considering that this is a key playoff race for later in the year?
Yeah, Matthew. I think the teams are probably going to be focused more on the race setup here. You're probably going to see some teams that are going to be trying something different, seeing like what works and what doesn't, because you had these tracks that they're going to be going to twice this year. That first race is going to be really important to make sure that they have all of their ducks in a row. But at the same time, it's a completely different time of year. The track conditions will be much different. So I think that the teams are probably going to be more focused on the race setup than there is qualifying, because if you have a really good car at Las Vegas, if even if you give up some of that speed for qualifying, focus more on the race, it's not going to really matter, because you just have a fast enough car to go to the front. And in the past of NASCAR, if you started in the back, it was really hard. It was really hard to go all the way to the lead. But nowadays, it's a lot easier and top equipment to go from the last row of the grid all the way up there contending for the win.
Yeah, definitely. And I can agree with that as well. I think in terms of, I guess you would call this the winterish spring race, more or less, the first race here at Las Vegas. I feel like you just got to focus on what like the Chevrolets did last season at this specific race. I mean, looking at the results, you had Alex Bowman win despite the Toyota battle, obviously, between Kyle Busch and Martin Truex Jr. Larson, Chastain, Kyle Busch, and then William Byron were your top 5 last year at this race. So I wouldn't necessarily say the focus is mainly on the setup for qualifying and race. I feel like you just have to have your car pass. I mean, I think the next-gen car is one of the biggest criticisms have been, at least this season. I know Kyle Busch was one of them, saying it's very difficult to pass in dirty air with these cars. So it's hard. I don't know if I would say I anticipate teams being setups. I think we just see so much variety nowadays, especially with this new car, all these different winners, that just a few of these teams is going to get it right, or are going to get it right for tomorrow and today for practice and qualifying, obviously. So I don't know. I'm like, once again, like kind of like last week, I'm expecting a Chevrolet type race, they seem to dominate the start of these seasons, especially with this new next gen car. So I guess one thing we're going to find out, but switching, we're going to be heading into the next question here. Former Chevrolet driver and current Toyota driver. Last year, Bubba Wallace won stage 1 of the most recent race here at Las Vegas, but had that incident which caused him to be suspended with Kyle Larson, and that also took out his Toyota teammate Christopher Bell. Luckily enough, Christopher Bell was to win the next week and lock himself into the championship. A couple more Toyota drivers, Denny Hamlin, and new Toyota driver Tyler Reddick, who we just Kobe broke some news for us about Tyler Reddick's car and condition for this race. They both had top 10 finishes and are 2 contenders as well for Toyota. We also discussed Martin Truex Jr. previously. Someone we have not mentioned out of the Toyota camp today, I feel like a little bit of an underrated season so far, is Ty Gibbs. Ty Gibbs, he is 17th in points. He is ahead of other rookie contender Noah Gragson, Vegas boy there, and 27th in points. That's 10 spots. No, it's early, but still. Also, he finished 22nd last year here with 23.11, and he was on the lead lap. So out of the 6 Toyotas, how many of them do you think are going to be in the top 10? And if you're feeling a little brave and risky, which ones do you think are going to be in the top 10?
Well, Matthew, I think Toyota could have a 50% top 10 finish rate. Those 3 drivers who I think could get in the top 10, I think Denny Hamlin, Martin Truex Jr., and possibly Christopher Bell. In regards to Ty Gibbs, I think he's still filling himself out in the Cup Series, still learning. So probably expect him to finish maybe 11th through 20th, and then 23-11. They had fast cars at Vegas last year, but as we've seen, they have a reliability problem right now. So there's no telling if they're going to be able to make it to the end of the race. So those 3 drivers I mentioned, Hamlin, Truex, and Bell, I think those are probably going to be the 3 Toyota drivers who have the best chance of finishing in the top 10.
Yeah, and I definitely can agree with you. And we were talking about pumping the brakes earlier. I feel like the whole 23-11, I feel like my pick a winner for the first one was Bubba Wallace, and then Tyler Reddick I thought was going to be a contender. Then seeing all the issues they've had already this season arise gets a little worrisome out of the Toyota camp. And it's kind of tough to say how many. Like we talk about the first race here at Las Vegas, Kyle Busch in a Toyota was 4th, Martin Truex Jr. was 8th, and Christopher Bell was in 10th. Then if you look at the results from what you would consider the fall race, you had Kyle Busch once again was in 3rd, Denny Hamlin was in 5th, Tyler Reddick now in a Toyota was 6th, Truex Jr. was 7th. And then rookie contender Noah Gragson subbing for Alex Bowman was in 11th. I know he's in the Chevrolet, but talking about he could be a threat here today at his hometown track. Out of the 6 Toyotas, though, how many am I going to say are in the top 10? I think I have to agree with you here, Kobe, and say probably 3 of them, half the field, with Denny Hamlin, Martin Truex Jr., and Christopher Bell. I think Christopher Bell has really been one of the most underrated drivers on the entire grid and has taken Toyota, I feel, to a level that we have seen with Kyle Busch. I think Christopher Bell can really fill that role as a young and prominent driver, unless he leaves. I don't know, hopefully, but for Toyota, he doesn't, as they saw Kyle Busch leave as well. But I would say 3. I would say 3 as well. I don't know about 2311. I think Bubba Wallace, who was driving his Kansas win car, totaled it last season here. So tough finish for them. And then same with Tyler Reddick starting. He's starting from the back, engine issues. The whole 2311 team, you're not sure. And then same with Ty Gibbs, just so young. It's so hard to predict some of these races. And that's the fun in it. That really is the fun in it. But talking about Las Vegas hometown drivers, we talked about Noah Gragson. One of them is hometown favorite Kyle Busch, looking to make it technically after today's Xfinity race. He's trying to do the sweep. He has 1 win here already this weekend in the, I almost said Camping World, Craftsman Truck Series, driving for his new team in Chevrolet. He has been in contention to win all of the races, including leading the 500th mile of the Daytona 500. And then, like I previously said, trying to make it a sweep. We'll see Xfinity later today, see if he can actually do that. He's done it before. I think he's the only driver to do it before. He did it at Bristol. Wouldn't be surprised if he could do it here at Vegas. And then, like last night, if you guys watch the truck race, we'll be discussing it on Monday as well. He just, lack of a better term, he dominated this race from start to finish. His first race with his team, Kyle Busch Motorsports, and the new manufacturer was Chevrolet. So now we talked a little bit about the lower tier series, but for Kyle Busch in the Cup Series at Las Vegas, finishing in the top 5 in the both most recent races here, do you believe he is the driver everyone will be gauging and chasing after his dominance at Las Vegas? Same with Auto Club last week and his win there.
Yeah, I think they're going to be chasing Kyle Busch at every angle. I think Kyle Busch could potentially sweep the weekend. Great performance last night in the truck race. It looks like they have a lot of work to do with the Xfinity car, but he said that they're going to be working on it. So if they give Kyle Busch a car, that he can work with, he could certainly be a threat as well. His teammate Chandler Smith Collick racing won the pole, so that Collick car is going to be fast. So Kyle Busch should be a contender today. And if last week was any indication of what could happen in the NASCAR, if last week at Auto Club Speedway was any indication of what could happen this week in the NASCAR Cup Series, I certainly think Kyle Busch could be a contender to win at his home track as well. And don't forget his son Brexton's making his debut at the Bull Ring across the street from the track. So we could see a full Busch sweep this weekend. Yeah, and it was, as we've been saying, I think it caught us all by surprise that Kyle Busch was this competitive and won so soon with RCR, showing all of the improvements they've made over the off season. And as a lot of people have been saying, the rest of the garage should be scared because Kyle Busch is hungry, he's motivated, and he's gonna go out there and try to roll off multiple wins. We might even see Kyle Busch win 2 or 3 races, but before we get to the Coca-Cola 600, the way RCR is looking so far. So I think Kyle Busch is definitely the measuring stick for the rest of the competition because a hungry rowdy is a scary rowdy.
Definitely. I think I remember saying, I think it was the Clash show or the Daytona show or the Duel, one of the 3 shows. We've done a lot. So it's kind of starting to blend together for me here. But I remember saying a happy rowdy, like you just said, it's scary. You haven't seen that smile on his face in quite a while, it feels like. And now just seeing him come into a new Chevrolet and stuff like that to just dominate, I guess. He is probably the only driver, I'd argue, maybe besides Ross Chastain this season, that has had that car to win every single race, including all the exhibition races that we had previously with both dual races, along with the Clash and then Daytona 500, Auto Club, and now here at Vegas. I think, yes, I think he is the driver to gauge this weekend. I mean, it's Kyle Busch here at Las Vegas, his home track. I wouldn't be surprised if he just dominates, but at the same time, I wouldn't be surprised if he Actually, no, I would be surprised if he doesn't do as well, because I mean, just seeing what he's become now, he has 225 wins, I believe, in NASCAR National Series all time. He's just slowly increasing that gap, and I think we all didn't expect it to happen this easily, this quickly. But I mean, he already has 2 wins in NASCAR, the top 3 series already, and we're only in the 3rd race weekend of the sport. So it's absolutely incredible to see what he does, and I think if he's a driver to pick for those fans joining in for the pick a winner, I wouldn't be surprised if Kyle Busch would be, I wouldn't say a lock just yet, but in terms of if you follow like betting odds and stuff like that, Kyle Busch was the favorite for every single race this weekend, which is quite an impressive feat to have. Not many drivers have that. But yeah, so that race that Kyle Busch will be doing, he'll be in one today as well, and he'll be in one tomorrow, Sunday at 3:30 p.m. Eastern time, the Pennzoil 400. Alex Bowman won it last season, and Kyle Busch wanting to just come back and do it again. I mean, it's Kyle Busch at Las Vegas, kind of go together like peanut butter and jelly. But we'll recap the race Sunday on Grid Live Wrap-Up, and make sure you subscribe to us right here on YouTube. And now, after this fun discussion we've had here today, Formula One, IndyCar, NASCAR Cup Series, it's time for everyone's favorite game, and it's pick a winner. It seems to be Edward's favorite game if we look at the standings here. Kobe, myself, who are currently on the broadcast, we're chilling at 2 points each. Edward seems to have taken off, and that gap has not seemed to decrease anytime soon. But I'll start, obviously, for you, Kobe, and then we welcome in the chat, please, in the comments, please do your pick of winners for each of the races. So first race, we're going to be discussing Formula One, breakfast time for most of us on the East Coast. Who is your pick of winner, Kobe, for Formula One?
Well, Matthew, been up there early in the morning, especially on the West Coast, might need a Red Bull to keep your energy levels high. So I'm going to go with the 2-time defending world champion. I think Max Verstappen is going to get the job done. Although I would really love to see Aston Martin mix up and potentially get Fernando Alonso back at the top step of the podium for the first time in a long time. But I'm going to keep the safe pick with Verstappen.
Yeah, and for me too, I like the Red Bull reference. I think you did a great job with that one. I talked about die-casts and stuff on the last show. We did the pick a winner. I'm lucky enough to have one of these for my pick a winner. It's going to be Red Bull as well. I'm going to join the Red Bull train with Joshua and you, Cody. I think it'll be Max Verstappen. I know we saw a lot of, it seems like whoever wins this race is always the runner-up in the Drivers' Championship for the past 5-6 seasons. So I was thinking Charles Leclerc. I really was thinking George Russell, Sir Lewis Hamilton, even I didn't really think Fernando Alonso, I'm not going to lie to you, Sergio Perez, but it's hard to pick against Max Verstappen. Even with the Red Bull penalty that we saw, that car is just fast. So sticking with Red Bull as well, Max Verstappen, I assume a lot of us will be gaining some points this weekend. But next sport, so we go from Formula One. The next one on the grid, on the schedule, is NTT IndyCar. So Kobe, for you, who is your pick a winner?
We talked about him a lot during our IndyCar section, and we're saying that this will be an important year for him to be up there competing for the championships and wins on a regular basis instead of having things go wrong. I think Colton Herta is going to start off 2023 on a strong note by winning the Grand Prix of St. Pete.
Awesome. And then unfortunately, I don't have any NTT IndyCar diecast here, so I can't really have some fun with it. And it's been tough. I mean, my two are probably Scott McLaughlin and Colton Herta, so I'm trying to think which route to go here. I'm going to go with you on this one, Cody. I'm going to go with, I think Colton Herta is going to get it done, but knowing our luck, it seems we'll have him as a runner-up finish. So I'm going to go Colton Herta for pick a winner for this race as well. And hopefully we don't get all three the same here as we discuss. Our last pick of winner for the weekend will be the NASCAR Cup Series at Las Vegas. So once again, Kobe, my third and final question for you. Who's your pick a winner for NASCAR this weekend?
I have a feeling we might be unanimous here because I'm going to go with the driver who won last week. I think he's on a hot streak. I think he's going to win the Xfinity race today after winning the truck race last night. I think Kyle Busch is going to get the job done in Las Vegas.
Okay. And for me, I want to pick Kyle Busch. I really do. So I'm going to say this to like Joe, to everyone who controls pick a winner. If Kyle Busch wins the Xfinity race, I will be changing my pick to Kyle Busch for the Cup race. But before, I'm going to go with the driver who also finished in the top five, both of these races, both on the podium. Driver of the number one, I don't have the updated car, but I'm going to go with Ross Chastain as the winner. He's been, I argue, the most dominant driver who has not won yet this season, winning the majority of the stages. This is a Jamie McMurray Banana Boat diecast. I don't have a Ross Chastain #1 diecast, but I'm going to go with Ross Chastain. Unless Kyle Busch wins today in the Xfinity race, then I will be switching my pick sometime not on air. But yeah, so those are my pick of winners here. But I'm going to throw it back over to you, Colby.
Yeah, and tomorrow, Sunday, be sure to tune in for a Grid Live wrap-up 90 minutes after the NASCAR Cup Series race at Las Vegas Motor Speedway to recap the Formula One Bahrain Grand Prix, the Firestone Grand Prix of St. Pete for the NTT IndyCar Series, and the Pennzoil 400 for the NASCAR Cup Series on Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Grid Live Encore, they'll recap the truck and Xfinity races from Sin City, plus Formula 2 and Formula 3 in Bahrain, Indy next in St. Pete, a packed show on Monday night. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thank you for helping us reach the milestone of 500 subscribers. Now let's see if we can reach our ambitious goal of 1,000 subscribers before the Indy 500 on May 28. Don't forget to hit the bell icon to get notifications. Follow all our social media platforms and visit gridringing.com. Take 5 minutes to invest in Grid Network through Patreon. Join Colin, Mark, Deshelle, Robin, and David in investing each month in the Grid Network. We encourage you to join the amazing group of people who keep us on the air. Once we hit $500 per month, we can start expanding our coverage, add new members to the team, and increase Grid Network presence on site, covering the races from the track, and more content. Link in the video description. If you want to do a one-time donation, click the link to buy me a coffee. You can get your name on the board and invest as much as you want. Consider buying a specific on-air personality a cup of coffee, and that will thank you right here on the air. Unfortunately, we're out of time for today. So for Joshua Birch and Matthew Bro, I'm Kobe Lambert from the Podium Finish. Thank you all for watching and enjoy the races.
Thank you for watching us right here on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe and check out some of our other videos, including Life on the Grid, where we interview folks from the motorsports industry. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.